authors, book lovers, and storytellers. Welcome to another Reader's Magnet featured author interview. We are currently live in all of our live streaming platforms, YouTube and Facebook. My name is Kimmy, and I am your host for today. And together with me right now is one of the Reader's Magnet featured authors, here to talk more about his journey as an author and the inspiration behind his book. We have Steven Sears, author of the book In the Beginning, A Consideration of Genesis. Hi, Steve. How are you today?
Hi, Kimmy. I'm fine, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about my book.
It is our pleasure, definitely our pleasure that we have you here in our platform. I think the best way to start off this interview, Steve, is to introduce yourself to our audience.
Thanks. My name is Steve Sears. I live in Hyde Park, Massachusetts. Back in 2021, I had the crazy idea of writing a book about Genesis that I've been thinking about for years and years. I'd been wanting to talk to people, to think about all the things I could see going on uh, in the book, but I didn't have any venue for doing it, and uh, I finally decided to write a book. I didn't think I'd ever finish it. I thought I might die before I did it. So imagine my surprise when in 5 months I'd finished the entire 22 chapters, just like that. And it's the book I've always wanted to write. Uh,
Wow.
yep,
That's nice. Like 5 months, you finish the entire book.
that's correct.
I think that's what you call dedication and skill, right? So, if you wanted to do something, it's not about the time that you spend. If you just really focus, you gave your best and you really love doing it, you know, 5 months is like, cause some other people I interviewed, Steve, they probably finished their book like 10 years,
Yep,
5 years and all that, and I was just amazed that you finished it for 5 months. And considering I actually got a portion of, or sort of like a general view of your book, and I find it very interesting
yes,
because it's a different kind of thing. Because for
yes,
most of the books that I get to read, because I'm also a book lover, I love reading books. Most of them are into fiction or probably like self-help kind of stuff, but yours is
yep,
totally different. Looking
yes.
forward on that. Okay, for the first question that I would like to ask, when did you first realize that you wanted to be a writer?
I never in my wildest dreams ever thought I'd be a writer. So what happened was I I've been reading the Bible all my life, and yeah, I jump around, and it annoys me when you go to church. You hear the same passages, the same stories, but there's all this other stuff in the Bible you never hear about. So I jump around. So I in 2012 I had finished some book, and I was trying to decide what would I like to read. I thought, why don't I start at the beginning? Let's start at Genesis. I went in with no expectations. I know all these stories. It's a familiar book. Everybody's read some of these stories. But but when I started reading, there was all this stuff I didn't remember seeing. There was all these details. I was getting really excited about it. It's like, oh my God, people don't know what's in this book. Oh my God. And I had all these ideas about what was going on. Genesis was so specific. You can make a lot of conclusions because Genesis is so specific, gives you numbers of ages. But I didn't do anything with it. I started reading other things, but I could never get rid of Genesis. Genesis kept staying with me. All these things I wanted to think about. So in May of 2021, as usual, I'm trying to go to sleep. I'm thinking about Genesis. It's 2 o'clock, it's 3 o'clock, it's 4 o'clock. I'm still thinking about it. I can't get to sleep. This has happened many times. I finally decided, I woke up the next morning. I said, that's it. I'm going to sit down and write this book. I don't care how long it's going to take. I may never finish it. So imagine my surprise when I started in June
Yeah,
2021, and 22 chapters later in November of 21, I'd written the whole thing.
amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's really, for me, Steve, what I'm actually thinking right now when you shared to me about what you did is really more of like, I would say, a grace, more of like, aside from the skill and the will that you really wanted to finish it, it's really more of like a grace to really create such masterpiece, right? Because I would say that. you know, a lot of things that you probably question yourself. Okay, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, and eventually you get to finish it, and then you realize, oh my god, this is what I've done. Like, you know, I was just in my mind, and then it's now
Mhm.
here, and you're
There it is.
sharing it. Yeah, sharing it to the world. I'm really inspired that hopefully that's possible for me as well to do in my life.
Yeah.
You're really an inspiration. And also, I would do you what you mentioned to me a part of, you know, when you started all in Genesis and all that. It's also, by the way, that's my favorite chapter in the Bible, because you know it's the beginning and everything. It
Yep.
started everything,
Yes.
and I think it's a good one to look back and to probably get on details and all. There's actually a part that I've actually got based on your book. So it has 50 chapters,
Yes.
and then it's not a commentary but an analysis.
That's correct.
So just for everyone's idea of whoever is watching right now, the part one is basically, guys, for the creation and evolution and the early patriarchs from
Yep.
Abraham. And then
Yep.
part two is a continuation that's with Jacob and his family.
Correct.
So it emphasizes the greatness of Abraham and
Yes.
how he lives in peace as outsiders. So
Yes.
I actually feel I love what you've written there, because somehow it gives me more of like, how can you work even if you're an outsider? Like, how can you do such a living, considering that, you know, you do your own? And that's something that I wanted to look forward for this book. What really was your what inspired you with having this idea on your book, Steve?
A lot of things. A lot of the reasons I wrote the book. There's all these conventions with what happens. So in the beginning, Adam is the fall of man. Poor Adam. He does this stupid thing. Oh, Eve, she gets tricked, and now she causes Adam to sin. I never bought any of that stuff. I felt like they're living the best they could. Um, we're making we're making judgments on them based on religious framework. If you took out the religious framework, I don't see any sin there. I don't see anything that people should feel ashamed of. The same with some of the other things that you see in Genesis. The one that really annoys me is the idea that um, Abraham could be considered a faithful person because he was willing to sacrifice his son. I think that's horrible. I never bought it. So I wanted to take a different look at all of it without any of the lenses of religion, because
Yeah.
the first chapter is the 12 things you need to know when reading Genesis. And
Mm-hmm.
one of them is that there's no religion in Genesis. There's no Christianity. There's no Judaism. That comes with Moses. All these
Right.
people, all these people are doing is trying to live their life either with God or away from God. And so you're
Right.
following different lines that stay with God, and you find different lines that go away from God. And they and oh, by the way, these people are not very perfect. They make all kinds of stupid things. They're so human. So that
I
was
like
part
that.
of it. That was part of it. And the other part was I was astonished at how great Abraham is. There's more things about Abraham than you're used to reading. And what he shows is that he's always able, even though he's left his home in Mesopotamia, never returns. That was a really nice area. It was cities. He moves to deserts and tents, all because God told him to. And he's an alien for the whole length you see him in Genesis, and yet he gets along with everybody. And Genesis shows you specifically how he does it.
I like that. I really like when you mentioned about, you know, you put on a different perspective,
Yes.
not putting on any religion or any faith or anything like that. It's pretty much just, you know, that's it. They're people. They live their normal lives and all. And you wanted the readers to also get that perspective. Like, what have they done way back? What Abraham leaving Mesopotamia, going to a different place,
Yep.
and to how he was able to really carry on. I think it's more of giving us moral lesson into how we can also survive, how can we do our thing even if we do it by our own, like something like that. So it's I really I'm very much what do you call this, looking forward on that certain kind of convention somehow. So I'll
Well,
definitely gonna read your book. It's, you know, it's kind of like a different kind of touch, because, you know, same with you, I do read my Bible.
Yeah.
ever since I was young. So I um what do you call this, Ecclesiasticals, Colossians, and all that. So I love Genesis is my favorite though. So gives me a different perspective and a different view, and definitely it's a must for me to read. I'll
But
definitely
but I
read that.
start with the Bible. I start with the Bible, but I also use Midrash. There's parts of the Quran that talk about all this, and I used a couple
Yeah.
books on archaeology that shows you what these places really look like.
Right. Amazing. How you actually capture, you're just not putting on one part of the coin. You're putting on
Yeah.
different perspectives on different people, because you can't just simply, it's for me it's more of like, if you send out about the Bible, it's like preaching. Some people might probably think,
Yes.
oh, he's
Yes.
preaching and all, right? But it's not, because you're telling them that people in different religion and different walks of life and different way of thinking actually has their own way, own part of the view, and you're giving it to them. And that's what I really like about your book. And I hope that people will be able to catch and to see that as well. How different your book is, and how this would also give us a different kind of view in reading with our Bible. And say, by the way, just on the next question, uh what is your work schedule like when you were working on, or when you were writing or working on this book?
That was interesting. I first had to work out how I was going to do it. So I had to figure out where I'm going to write it in my house. Um, I needed to improve my computer. Didn't have Office, so I had to get an Office menu so I could write it. I got an external hard drive so I wouldn't lose what I wrote. I needed to get a keyboard because I can't type on a laptop. Once I set all those up, what I did was I'm retired, but I'm still pretty busy. So what I would do is I would look for blocks of time. If I had a block of time, I would write then, and all the chapters are subdivided. So I would try to get through a block of the story, and each time I sat down and wrote. So I just kind of, as I went through, I got part by part. I got through the first part, which goes all the way through Abraham, and then you move on to Jacob, and it just part by part. Um, when I
Okay.
used when I used to work, I used to have to write these quarterly reports that were long, and you took all
Mm.
this different information that synthesized it. Some of it had figures, so it was a lot like writing a quarterly report. I was used to doing that.
Nice. Is there any sequel that you probably think of, or
Uh,
can you share a tiny bit of it?
well, I've actually, interestingly enough, I not long after that I read Revelation, and it annoyed me
Mm,
because I can't figure it out. So I've had a lot of thoughts about a book on Revelation. I'm
nice.
still in the thinking process, but again, it would be different. It would
Yeah.
be looking at the different um, um, last times. There's different other people have written that kind of book, written different things from Old Testament. Um, I'm looking at the type of societies that produced it was usually these ridiculously horrible
Yeah.
civilizations like Assyria, like Babylon, like Rome. All these different writings came out of those civilizations. Um, I would look at the time of John,
Right.
his experience, because um, the church was founded. As soon as it was founded, there was this tremendous persecution. Um, John is the only apostle that lived the old age. All the rest of them died horrible deaths.
Mm,
I feel like all
yeah.
those things conspired to produce what he wrote.
Right. And I think it's kind of like, people, when you talk about Revelation, they probably think of this scary kind of
Yeah.
vibe, right? That the
Yes.
Babylon and all, even the changes of the language, and what do you call this? There was a story about endings and all. And I think when you kind of like, okay, it's complicated and all, but I know, considering that your skill and your will, I hope that we can also look forward for a different kind of perspective,
It would be
or
very
different
different.
kind of view. Yeah, yeah, that's right. And to for my last question, Steve, I would like to ask: is your book advocating for any specific cause or agenda, and what is it, and why is it important for you as an author?
Boy, I would say even more now, it's this. I think this book is really relevant because one of the reasons I wrote it is everybody thinks if you read the Bible shows you that there can be no peace in the Middle East. These people have been fighting forever. Judges, they're fighting all through Old Testament, David, Solomon, they're all fighting all the time. But if you look at Genesis, if you look at Abraham, he's not fighting. He's getting along with his neighbors. And it showed me that it's not impossible for these people to get along. But if you look at Abraham, he shows you how he did it. So every time there's a problem, he for starters, he doesn't own property. He's not a titled person. He's not over people. And anytime there's a problem, he usually compromises so that the other side gets the better of the deal. He doesn't care because he realizes the relationship's more important than any outcome. He does that with his nephew Lot. When there's conflict with them, he lets them choose where they would live. When he had a conflict with Abimelech, they worked it out. Um, um, and then with let's see what else. Just throughout, there's all these like when Sarah dies, he bargains for property barrier. Well, he overpays. He takes more land than he should, but he does it because it was right. There's
Right.
there's there's other situations where he goes to rescue Lot. He wins all this property, all these people, um, and instead of keeping it, all his neighbors come and they expect him to. They make a deal with him. They say, um, "You can keep the people. Give us the stuff." And he says, "Nope, I don't want anything. All I want is what it costs my people." He refused to stand over them.
Right. And I hope there would always be Abraham in all of us, right?
Yes,
So
yes,
there would be no more war and all that. So
yep.
it's a great different perspective to, to feel also that no matter what's happening in the world at some point, there would always be an Abraham in each and every one of us that would be a sharer to the people, to the neighbors, to be a good example as well
Yeah,
to all of us. All
yep.
right. Thank you so much, Steve, for your time. We really appreciate it. And I guess I have asked all the questions. And this concludes our interview for today. Do you have any parting words or line that you would like to share to our audience, Steve, before we end the interview?
Good question. I just think it's a really readable book. Uh, and what I like about it is if you were from any religion or no religion, you would enjoy getting to know it. And if you, my hope would be that if you read it, you would go back to the Bible, and then you might not agree with all that I wrote, but you would at least uh, you would certainly have a lot of ideas to wrestle with.
Yes, certainly a lot of ideas that we'll get. Thank you, Steve. And yes, everyone, that's Stephen Sears, author of the book In the Beginning, A Consideration of Genesis. You may grab a copy of his book at Amazon and Barnes& and Noble. Again,
Right?
thank you so much for your time, Steve. And thank you, everyone who's watching right now.
It
And
is.
as we say here, that's the book of Steve. You can
Yes.
grab a copy. And as we say here in Reader's Magnet, we share your story with the world. Thank you, Steve. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Kim. Good.
Bye.